the game's over.
Welcome to Triple Zeros. I am Josh Buckhalter. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Give me a follow on Twitter at JoshGBuck. Hit up the Facebook page, Triple Zeros. Hit up the website, juicejumps.wordpress.com. And the email address is triplezerosnoease@gmail.com. That's triplezerosnoease@gmail.com. We did not go live last week. We did go live last week. But I do want to talk about, of course, the big game, Super Bowl Sunday. If you weren't watching it, I don't know what else you were doing. I'm not sure that there was much else that was worth doing but watching that game. And I think we were treated to a very good game. And it was one, not to toot my own horn, but, when people say that usually means exactly what it means right now, is that they're about to toot their own horn. That game went exactly as I had predicted. And I'm not claiming to be anything special with that because the Chiefs were obviously the favorite. But that went as predictable as I think it could go, with the 49ers jumping out to that early lead and then struggling to maintain it. And one of the big reasons why I think that I was kind of keen to the game playing out that way, was because of how I saw the offenses built like San Francisco play throughout the postseason. I told you on the last episode, we saw it with Tennessee, how Kansas City kind of just exposed them. Tennessee was able to frustrate the offense of Kansas City for a few drives for some of the game, but they can't get him for the entire game. When Patrick Mahomes, when the game gets on his shoulders, he just elevates the level of that team offensively, and you saw that again. They were roughing him up. He was running for his life the whole night, sacked 4 times. He still finished the night, 286 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did throw 2 picks, but he also ran for 29 yards and had a touchdown, and he won the MVP. It was a performance that, in the beginning, when the game was initially over, I was like, man, Damian Williams should have gotten the MVP. I still have some sentiments that he might have gotten a little gypped on there. He did have 104 yards on the ground and a touchdown on 17 carries. He also had 29 receiving yards on 4 carries and a touchdown, that questionable touchdown that I still think was one, because whether or not you want to say he stepped out of bounds, if anything, he stepped out of bounds and the ball broke the front of the plane of the end zone simultaneously. But on top of that, it's too close to make the call. Once they call it a touchdown on the field, you kind of have to let that stand with the camera angle. Now, that being said, there was some trepidation on my behalf, saying, I don't know, I feel like Williams kind of got robbed. Looking at Mahomes' stat line, does look better than he was for most of the game. But then you think about what he had to do to probably get there, because it was ugly for him. For, like I said, he was running for a lot of that. Nick Bosa and those boys were getting after him pretty good, knocking him around for 4 sacks. But when the Chiefs needed the offense from him, when they needed him to make plays, he did that. He had that run where he broke out of a sack, looked like he was going down for sure, and slid. And I think that it was kind of like the one against Tennessee where he broke for the touchdown. You just kind of saw him take over, and then a couple plays later, they hit Tyreek Hill deep down the field, and then you had the pass interference at the 1-yard line, and that brought them to within 3 points after that score. And you just knew. Once they got that touchdown, that deep pass to Tyreek Hill, I remember saying out loud, oh, that's it. Because they found it. They found that gap that they were looking for. If you recall, last episode, I was talking about how the RPO offense of the Chiefs is going to expose that zone defense that the Niners like to run. And for a good chunk of that game, they were doing a good job of keeping the lid on, that is San Francisco. But there's just too many weapons in the Kansas City offense. We saw Tyreek Hill. They were trying to force him the ball. He got 16 targets in this game. He ended up with 9 catches, 105 yards. But Sammy Watkins also was able to get off 5 catches, 98 yards. And he really had a couple of big plays against Richard Sherman. We'll talk about him in a moment. But it's just such a diverse offense that Travis Kelce, the stud tight end, ended up with 6 catches, 43 yards. But he did have a very critical touchdown. So I'm not going to knock him completely. But it wasn't the dominant performance that I think some of us, including myself, thought we would see between he and Kittle coming into this game. And Kittle also had a pretty pedestrian stat line, but maintaining the focus on the Chiefs right now, there was just a lot to like about this offense coming in, and just you can get to Mahomes, you can get the pressure on him, but eventually he's going to be able to break away because the defensive line is going to get tired too. And with all those weapons, somebody's going to be open, and he found a guy open time and time again, especially as the game wore on and the Chiefs defense, or the 49ers defense, had to keep chasing after him. It was clearly a tough game for them. Like I said, Nick Bosa was a stud in this game. He had a sack, but per Pro Football Focus, he had 30% pressure rate. No one else in the game had greater than 20%. His teammate now, Brentson Buckner. I always want to call him Brentson Buckner. DeForest Buckner had a sack and a half. And I just think that, first of all, Nick Bosa is a stud defensive lineman. Let me not take anything away from him. But I think we kind of undersell the importance of the rest of that defensive line, too, with 3 other first-round picks in Dee Ford, in Eric Armstead, and Buckner right next to Nick Bosa. So it's not like he was by himself. But again, they were getting pressure the entire night. But I think what you saw from, again, that Kansas City offense, it was, like I told you in the last week, when it comes down to it, when they're having to rally from behind, you have to put it on Patrick Mahomes. That's what they're built to do. They're built to have to get points in bunches really quickly and make up the gap. And that's why they kind of have trouble with sustaining an offense. You saw the running game was actually much better once they were trailing. So I think it's an odd dynamic, and you kind of saw that as a person who here in Chicago got to witness the Bears, which is an offshoot of that offense there. When the passing game is going, this offense, this scheme is built to throw to set up the run. And you saw that with the Chiefs. Once they got away from trying to be a run first or even trying to be a balanced team, really, and let it be on Mahomes' shoulders, he threw 42 passes in this game. You saw everything else kind of open up for him. You saw him get into the rhythm. He got more comfortable. The offensive line settled in. The playmaker started making plays, and it was just one of those performances. Now, the Chiefs' defense stepped up, too, late in the game. You had Rashad Breeland and Kendall Fuller both having an interception apiece, but low-key, Chris Jones, defensive tackle Chris Jones, had 3 knockdown passes. I saw on Twitter somebody asked why people were questioning the decision to throw at Chris Jones on one of Garoppolo's passes, and you see it that's why. 3 passes. That he led the team in that stat. Now, he's 6'6". He'll be a free agent. We'll see where he ends up. But he probably won't leave Kansas City. I don't know how they let him go. Franchise tag, something. He can't leave. But you see the impact that the Kansas City defense was having without necessarily being as highly regarded as the 49ers defense was. Now, granted, they only got to Garoppolo one time. Garoppolo finished the game 219 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, 1 sack, 69.2 rating. He completed 64% of his passes. But I think you saw once Garoppolo had to be the quarterback, which was the thing that I warned about. And I know it was kind of just like waiting. This is almost like a confirmation bias, but it really is just what I've seen. I've said it before. This was the Bears last year. Garoppolo's probably a step up from Mitch because he's had extended stretches where he's looked competent, but when the game was put on his shoulders, it just wasn't there. I think that was the biggest thing that you kind of drew from that, is that no matter how talented that defense was, Garoppolo was holding them back when they ultimately needed for him to be a playmaker. He just couldn't do it. Now, he made some plays when things were even. They were Chiefs and to keep that shoulder on the chip on the shoulder that he's running back, and you're the only thing that the team has. That should kind of go a long way to you being, that the talent. But talking about the secondary and the status of the secondary as of right now, we know that the Bears recently signed CFL former Calgary Stampeders cornerback Trey Roberson to a 2-year contract. Some say that that's signifying the departure of Prince Amukamara. We will see. Talk about that in the article a little bit and how both he and Kyle Fuller had down years this year. But again, if one of them is going to be going, it's going to be, if anyone's going, it's going to be likely Amukamara. I'll guarantee you're going to see Clinton Dix elsewhere next year. Not a great fit. It wasn't a horrible fit, but it's not a great fit for the Bears, and he's earned himself some more money than what he's going to get anywhere in Chicago. So that is what it is. I think that the Bears are grateful. There was a little bit of back and forth about how Allen Robinson was openly lobbying for Eric Berry to join the Bears next year, and people were talking about how was hurt, and he was listen, you have to know you earn more money than what you're going to get here in Chicago, and you need to be playing the role that you played here, which was actually supposed to be Eddie Jackson's role. And let me just say this, after seeing the two of them play on the field together, I have a greater appreciation for what Adrian Amos brought last year, 2018, in the strong safety role next to Eddie Jackson. Let me just put it that way, because I saw a lot of that in Eddie Jackson this year, and I saw a lot of people dogging him for what he wasn't doing, when I was like, man, Eddie's been pretty good at tackling. He's got a tendency to not be great in space, and I think he did better with taking better angles this year and not letting the play get behind him. So that was just one of the things that I noticed, but I saw a lot of, he's not making the turnovers, he's not getting the big plays, and, turnovers are fluky, man. That's just how it goes. The Roberson thing, though, is definitely interesting. I think that Amukamara was a steadying force, but I think that he has lost a step to the point where it's feast or famine with him now, where he gets you some good plays, but he's also going to get beat some, and it seems like when he gets beat, it's at some of the most critical of moments, and you just can't have it. And also, the Bears have to replenish the depth there anyway. He's already at 30 years old. They're going to have limited funds that could use some of that money, especially if they use a draft pick on that position. And I'll talk about that probably next episode, where I think they're going to start slotting the positions in terms of need. And that'll obviously be shaped more as the offseason goes on, but early on where I think they'll go with it. But the Roberson thing is definitely one to keep an eye on. I did have to say in the article there is a mea culpa of sorts. I do kind of had to keep it honest when I was wrong about a player or a situation. I had to own up to it. And the one that was for the Bears is Buster Skrine. I was staunchly against his signing. I thought he would be beaten out by rookie Duke Shelley in the slot. And Skrine actually had the best of the three corners, the three primary cornerbacks between Skrine, Fuller, and Amukamara. Skrine had the best season statistically of them all. And kudos to him, because I just did not think it was going to happen. Now, maybe that's because they were picking on the outside guys. Who knows? But he talked about the quarterback stuff. Now, I kind of touched on the last episode. I want to touch on it a little bit here again. I want to say it in no uncertain. We saw that you really need that quarterback to be the difference maker. Now, how aggressive Pace is, that's hard to tell. He said that he's going to stick by Mitchell Trubisky, but he also said there won't be roster changes, or they weren't ready to make any decisions on staff and roster, and then immediately fired the coaching staff, offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach. Not quarterbacks coach, they offensive line coach. They promoted the quarterbacks coach and then hired another one. So you got to kind of wait and see what he does. I think that they're not getting rid of Trubisky, so that's gone out of the wayside. But I think whoever they bring in is going to clearly determine what their thought process is. If they spend any kind of money on this position, Trubisky's done, and he's there simply as a backup, and hopefully or maybe to try to flip to some team that thinks they can fix him for some draft pick or whatever they can get. I firmly believe that that's the best way to go about it. I know you're going to hear a lot of, that's crazy, you can't go back into the well and start throwing around money. You need to try to write it out when you're going to have some more free cash and get closer to being able to get out of the Mac deal, which I got to touch on that too. But I think that if you wait to try to move on from Trubisky, who I do not think has the potential to be a franchise quarterback, you're going to end up hindering and costing yourself the best years of this defense, which again is in my opinion, Super Bowl caliber for whatever that's worth, because if you're not in there, you can't really be Super Bowl caliber, whatever. This is a great defense, and they're going to waste it on a quarterback who is severely limited, who's still trying to master reading coverages. I think that tells you all you need to know, and that should tell Ryan Pace all he needs to know. If he's trying to get out here, if he's trying to get a Super Bowl like they say, then he needs to make sure that he gets out and gets a real quarterback behind that to run his offense, to run Matt Nagy's offense. Let Matt Nagy discuss it this time, because part of the problem is he didn't let John Fox in on the discussions, because there might have been a Deshaun Watson sighting at Soldier Field if he'd have talked to Watson. He didn't though. So I just want them to be proactive and not reactive, because they're tied to this or that and the other. I think if you're tied to him now, I do want to make it clear, there's a good chance that he can't make any more moves because he's going into this basically as a lame duck season. So if that's the case, so be it. But I think that that's not the case. I think that if he gets to spend any money, and I guess that's telling that he didn't get to spend. We'll see. It's so early in the process. There's a lot of speculation right now, especially on my part. But I just think that waiting to be proactive on Trubisky and moving on from Trubisky is going to be a hindrance. If he is the Alex Smith that they think that he can be, which is why, the connections to wanting to bring him in, the Matt Nagy thing and all that stuff, that means he won't be good here anyway. So just cut out the middleman, get to it right now, and move on. Just a thought. Now, on that Khalil Mack subject and his contract being the worst and how they spent a lot, it was an awful lot. But I think it's a horrible trade in hindsight, and it probably was bad and at the time. But I don't see how it's a bad trade if their line of thinking was correct. And we can't, revisionist history is always perfect. It's always correct. You're always right in hindsight. So in the moment, and remember, Trubisky was the number one quarterback on a lot of lists. So let's not go there. Despite what a lot of people want to say, including myself, a lot of the so-called experts out there had him at the top of their quarterback list. But I think that if he would have been a success, that wouldn't have been an issue. So it was a go all in move. They got a big chunk of it wrong, and they're still paying for it to this day. And again, you just can't afford to waste it anytime. So long story short, be on the lookout for that article in Last Word on Pro Football tomorrow at some time. I'm going to take a quick break, and when I come back, I'm going to talk about some NBA news, including the Chicago Bulls and how things are just getting from bad to worse on the Madhouse on Madison. Back in a moment. Triple Zeros. Back now on Triple Zeros, and I am your host, Josh Buckhalter. Follow me on Twitter at Josh G Buck, and hit up the Facebook page hit up the Facebook page Triple Zeros. Hit up the website jukesjumps.wordpress.com, and the email address is triplezeros no e's @gmail.com. Switching gears to the NBA, man. Listen, there's a lot going on. Trade season is heating up, and you have a lot of speculation. You have the All-Star game right around the corner, and you have some floundering teams. Yes, Bulls, I am looking at you and the pitiful things that you are doing on the basketball floor these days. But first and foremost, I want to talk about Kyrie Irving. Hurts his knee. He's gonna be out for some time. I think they need to find an excuse for Kyrie to sit out the rest of the year and wait for Kevin Durant to come back so that because this is get your body healthy. Don't try to go out there proving anything to anybody because you feel like you have to show them that you're a leader. Just come back next year and go ahead and be Robin. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm being dead serious. Just let it be, because this is getting to be to a point where I think that, for all intents and purposes, Kyrie is hurting himself long term. He's already talked about he might not play that long anyway. And just the injuries pile up, especially soft tissue injuries like that on a guy who's already had plenty of them in his career. The longer that he keeps doing this to himself, the worse it's going to end up being. And I just don't want to see that for him. Don't want to see that for the Nets. Again, if you've been listening, and I hope you have, again, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, greatly appreciate it. But if you've been following along, you know that I am a big fan of what the Nets are attempting to make in Brooklyn, trying to elevate themselves from being the second city. It does have a little bit of the feel of the Lob City Clippers, where they're going to be all hype and not really a ceiling there. But I think that if it does work out, I think it has the potential to be something spectacular that we just really don't. The city of the borough has never seen that the franchise needs. I think it'd be great. I'm just a big fan of it. I think I wanted the Bulls to model themselves something along those lines. They've been messing that up. We'll get to them in a moment. But Kyrie Irving, man, just get healthy. Get healthy. Wait for KD, because right now, brother, it ain't happening. You're looking worse, and people are dogging you, and I don't know how else to tell you to handle it. Just not looking good. So, I mean, that's so basic, such a basic argument for it, but and they won. They win when he's not playing. That's the worst part about it. But he's a great player. I told you, he's not a bad man. He's better than Robin. He's a Nightwing. But I just think that when you see those guys go out there and try to be Batman, you often end up getting those empty results. He's good as a complimentary piece. He needs to be that. He can't be the focal point. That's when things fall apart. And that's why you see teams that are without him improve. It's not that they improve because he's not there. It's that they improve because he's no longer the focal point. That's all it is. That's as simple as that. Anything else is kind of ridiculous. I think people try to overanalyze, make themselves feel smarter than they really are about the subject, or to just really try to downplay somebody's impact and what they really can do. Kyrie's very capable, so I'm not here. I'm not going to ever take any Kyrie slander, but he definitely is not a alpha on the team. He's a beta player. That's no disrespect. He's Scotty. He can be a great Scotty, but he's a Scotty. The other news, man, Damian Lillard. Over his past 6 games, the man's averaging 48 points, 7 rebounds, 10 assists, and going straight up bananas. I don't know how else to put it. It started off with a 61-point game against the Warriors on the 20th of January, and just most recently, Dame dropped 51 on Utah. The man is on fire right now. I can't even argue with it. I was dogging them, and I still think they have a lot of issues on that team. It's mostly injuries, though, and everybody else. But Dame is doing everything he can to elevate this team and get them back on track to the playoffs, because we know that they were Western Conference Finals last year, struggling this year. They need it. They need it right now more than ever, and Dame is showing that he at least was worth the contract, and there's no sort of chemistry issue. They just need some more houses on that team, and I'm not sure if they're going to be able to get them, what they're going to do to get them, but Dame is killing. 48, 10, and 7. My goodness. It's Dame time. And I hope he keeps it up. I don't know how long it's going to keep it up and how far it's going to get them, but he killing. Dame is a beast, man. That man is on fire right now. I think one of the things, though, I still stand on it, that between he and CJ, one of them has to go, and it's probably CJ, and you got to get some wing help. You got to diversify the way that the scoring is coming from. If it's all coming from the backcourt, which it is, that's going to be an issue no matter what team it is. I don't care who you got back there. You got to be able to diversify and come from different levels at any time in the game. You're just not getting it. You don't get enough. Now, they're both terrific scorers, but in the playoffs, things slow down, and you just need to be able to go at different levels at teams and you just don't see that with this team. And they're locked in this backcourt. It's going to be a similar fate. I think they were maxed out last year, and I think they're going to end up falling somewhere short this year just because they can knock out any team. That's not to say they don't have it in them. I just don't see them being able to keep it up for 7 games. As far as them being able to overcome defensively what the other team's going to throw at them, and then be able to keep up the shooting. You know, shooters go cold. That happens. Even the best of them. So I think that's what's going to hurt them, is that because it's the two guys, they're going to rely on them for so much. It's going to happen at the worst time, and then there's going to be no one else to help them out. Now, they will get Nurkic back soon. We'll see how that all works out. Maybe they move Whiteside and bring in somebody else. Who knows how it all shakes out with the deadline coming up, but word is it's going to be a accessory piece, a complimentary piece deadline this year. The trade deadline is, as there's not really many marquee names being up for mention. Among the names being mentioned, though, is Derrick Rose of the Detroit Pistons, one of the teams that I told you before the season I didn't see them being a playoff team again this year, and they're selling, looking to move on. Rumor has it they're trying to get a deal going for Clint Capella, for Andre Drummond. See how that works out. But Derrick Rose is a name that's been popping up a lot, and aside from wanting to come back to Chicago, there has been talk of him going to LA in exchange for Kyle Kuzma. I'm not sure that's a deal that the Lakers should really do. I think you can get more for Kuz, and that's no diss to Derrick Rose. They need Derrick Rose, so maybe that's what facilitates it. The need outweighs whatever unevenness there is, inequality there is in the actual value of the players in a vacuum. Maybe that's how they decide to balance it out. But for Rose, I would like to see him have a chance to get a championship. I already told you that my pick to come out of the West is the Lakers, but they do need to make a trade. I think it's funny, real quick, on the sidetrack from the trade notes, we know that the Clippers are in the trade market as well, and they need a couple of things, but primarily they need a real point guard to set things up for them so the offense doesn't get stagnant. And you have the Lakers, who are in need of a wing. Now, the Lakers have Rajon Rondo, a player who is a really good point guard, but is kind of limited in shooting department.